Welcome to Anime Recaps. In this video, we will explain Radiant. This anime tells a story of an aspiring sorcerer from the Pompo Hills area. Like all wizards, he is an infected, one of the few living beings who survived the contact of the Nemesis creatures fallen from the sky that contaminate and decimate all those they touch. Being immune to them, he wants to become a hunter and fight the Nemesis. How is his journey in fighting Nemesis? Let's find out in Radiant.
Loro sono gli unici a lottare.
The first episode of Radiant opens with the figure of a boy named Seth. On that peaceful day, Seth was enjoying the rooftop view of Pompo Hills, enjoying the bread he had just bought. After that, he meets his close friend, Tommy, and intends to show him his magical abilities. Seth brought the master's magic books, even without permission. His attempts to demonstrate his magical abilities with the book's guidance continued to fail. Finally, he tried to summon magic or fantasia with his own Titan Punch move. Unfortunately, although Seth's magic this time worked, Titan Punch instead targeted a nearby farm, angering the herd of cows. Seth and Tommy run towards the village as the herd of cows chases after them. On the other side of the village, a witch named Alma is having a hard time in the market. The salesman refused to serve her because she was a magician. Finally, Alma had to threaten so that she could buy necessities from the seller. Then, she noticed a herd of cows entering the village and chasing after Seth. She used magic power to stop the herd of cows and make them line up neatly, and scold Seth for making such a mess. At the same time, the villagers of Pompo Hills saw the chaos and blamed Alma and Seth. They then quickly ran away after the villagers threw stones at Alma. Alma and Seth return to the house, which is a hot air balloon. As punishment, Alma orders Seth to clean the outer walls of the house. She then advised him to stop making a mess with his magic power. Alma, who seems to be like a mother and a teacher to Seth because she has taken care of him since childhood, advised him to focus on being a good person, not just being a magician. Seth was still curious about the villagers' attitude, who hated witches so much. Alma then explains that magicians are considered as dangerous as Nemesis, a disruptive monster falling from the sky. In the evening, Seth reads about Nemesis and is determined to become a great wizard to defeat them. That determination made him train even harder the next day. Tommy, an ordinary human, accompanies Seth to train even though his parents have forbidden him to be close to witches. Seth tells Tommy he will prove to everyone by becoming a Nemesis hunter. Seth's chance to meet Nemesis apparently came at that very moment. In the village, an egg-shaped Nemesis fell from the sky. The villagers demand Alma come to save them. But at that time, she was in another village to catch Nemesis, who was messing around. Seth realized that this was his fight. Seth brought Alma's magic equipment and came to the Nemesis. Meanwhile, Tommy warned residents to evacuate away. Seth's attempt to defeat Egg Nemesis failed, until finally, the egg-shaped monster broke, and a larger Nemesis emerged. Tommy saw Seth nearly lost, running to help him, but he was attacked by Nemesis instead. Seth tries to protect his friend even though he falls under Nemesis' body, almost being crushed to death. In a precarious state, a group of magicians suddenly came. The leader of the group, who introduced himself as the Bravery Quartet, managed to seal Nemesis before praising Seth's bravery. Don Bossman, the leader, trusted Seth to handle the Nemesis alone. He then intends to bring Seth into his group even though the villagers make fun of him and say he is useless. Seth is again faced with Nemesis and is confused when the Titan Punch move doesn't have any effect. On the other hand, Tommy is at the bank to meet his father when a member of the Bravery Quartet suddenly arrives and asks everyone to get out. Apparently, the Bravery Quartet sees the opportunity when Nemesis attacked the village to commit a crime. Returning to the village, Seth fails to tie Nemesis with chains, making Nemesis's power multiply and destroy the village. Alma returns to the village and sees the chaos that has occurred. At the same time, Seth heard screams coming from the bank and saw the Bravery Quartet robbery. Don Bossman thanks Seth, whom he assumes helped with the robbery by distracting Nemesis. The villagers of Pompo Hills believe that Seth is conspiring with the Bravery Quartet. Seth is angry when Don Bossman tries to pay him with the stolen money and beats the leader through the wall. He tells Seth there's no point helping ordinary humans, as well as how they are the same. But Seth refuses to be identified as a robber and tries to attack the other members of the Bravery Quartet, but Gigi manages to save the group. The Bravery Quartet finally leaves, leaving the citizens still bound and Seth having to defeat Nemesis, who is becoming stronger alone. He promised Tommy never to leave him. In the distance, Don Bossman was stunned to see Seth using the Fantasia Titan Punch with his bare hands. Seth finally weakened Nemesis, and Alma defeated it with a skull attack fantasy. After the fight was over, Alma asked Seth to go home. She treats his wounds and says she has caught the bravery quartet. She warns him not to use Fantasia with his bare hands. Seth expresses the desire to destroy all Nemesis. Alma then tells a tale about a Nemesis lair named Radiant. He gets even more excited to find Radiant, but she insists the place is just a fairy tale. The scene moves to a flashback to Alma and Seth's past. Alma first meets Seth at the hospital. At that time, she had just lost her memory and right hand. She took Seth with her until she finally had to leave him alone at home because she worked as a Nemesis hunter. Seth, who was young, was bullied by other children. He received punches and kicks until his magic got out of control and exploded the area. The villagers catch and are about to kill Seth when Alma comes to save him. Alma was determined to take him to a safer place from that moment. They finally find a home in a hot air balloon. The grown Seth intends to embark on a journey to find the Radiant in the present. Although initially reluctant, Alma allows and gives him a broom and new gloves. She warned him not to become a monster. Their farewell was moving, but Seth still left with a wave of the villager's hand. On the other hand, there is an Inquisitor organization consisting of Von Tepes and Ulmina Bagliore as major Inquisitors. The organization group is led by a captain named Liselade and a colonel named Santori, the Peak, and General Inquisitor Torque, the Beast. The Inquisitors gathered to discuss a horned mage, who was none other than Seth. The moving scene shows an Inquisitor, Captain Dragonov, successfully capturing a magician and keeping him on the ship. Seth crashed the ship at that moment, so Captain Dragonov was about to catch him. He tried to fight back using magic against the Inquisitor. Captain Dragonov finally managed to catch him and lock him up. In captivity aboard, Seth meets a young witch named Melly and her childhood friend Mr. Boobry. Melly apparently headed to the Pompo village but got lost on the way until she was caught by Dragonov. She plans to retrieve the Nemesis carcass. On the other side, there is Doc, a researcher from the Artemis Institute who has come to retrieve the Nemesis carcass. However, he suffers the same fate as Melly and Seth and is imprisoned by the Inquisitor. Melly attempted to free them by telling Mr. Boobry to retrieve the key to the cage. Before leaving the ship after being freed, Seth took Doc and Melly to get their luggage. However, their actions were easily noticed by Captain Dragonov. A fight ensued, and Melly turned into another, more ferocious figure. She apparently has a curse, where when she is stressed, her personality turns fierce. Captain Dragonov manages to stop her, but Seth destroys the ship and manages to escape. After that, Seth, Doc, and Melly continue their journey toward Artemis Academy. Upon arriving at the city of Artemis, Seth was flabbergasted by the sheer number of magicians. Melly invited them to register as citizens of Artemis to use the city's facilities. According to Alma's information, Seth accepted the offer to meet Yaga, the strongest mage that was in Artemis Academy. Seth and his friends arrived at the town hall just as the welcoming ceremony started. The leader of Artemis Academy, named Master Lord Majesty, appeared on the stage and greeted Seth. He asked Seth and others to sign a contract. Seth agreed to sign the contract, not knowing that it was Master Lord Majesty's attempt to turn them into Artemis hunters. They were burdened with a huge debt by Master Lord Majesty. The debt increased every time they used the facilities in Artemis. Even though their debt continues to grow, Seth can live in peace and quiet with the protection of Artemis. Master Lord Majesty made sure they were safe from the Inquisitor. Even Dragonov said Artemis had 13 strongest magicians who made their security invincible. Knowing that Seth had entered Artemis, Dragonov returned to the base and informed the other members of the Inquisitor group that he had met Seth. He then explains that Seth can use Fantasia with his bare hands. Hearing that, the Inquisitor decided to capture Seth because of his great power. At Artemis, Seth finally meets the old wizard who is Yaga. Yaga is one of the 13 strongest magicians of Artemis. He refuses to provide information about Radiant because he thinks Seth is too weak and can't use Fantasia. Seth then asked Melly to teach him magic, but she could only do defensive magic when she wasn't in her other personality. Seth meets Doc at a cafe for help teaching magic. Doc refuses, but their conversation is overheard by Melda, the cafe owner, who is amazed by Doc's magical abilities. Doc is pleased to receive Melda's praise and agrees to teach Seth magic. He teaches how to use the meteor drop Fantasia, but Seth is having a hard time mastering this Fantasia. Melly's other personalities appeared and attacked Seth with meteor drops for him to imitate. But Melly's attack actually puts Seth in danger, making him finally manage to issue a meteor drop fantasy move. Yaga realizes Seth's abilities and decides to train him. He trains Seth very hard. When Seth finally has a chance to rest at the cafe with his friends, an octopus pulls Doc to the ground. Yaga explains that the octopus is not Nemesis but a witch's pet that was accidentally thrown into a water channel. Witches apparently often experiment with pets, and when the experiments don't go well, the animals are thrown away. This pet has different characteristics and traits, such as the one that kidnaps Doc apparently loves coffee. So Doc, who was drinking coffee at the time, was kidnapped. Seth intends to save Doc and uses coffee drinks to lure the octopus. But the octopus is tougher and manages to defeat Seth and Melly. Seth has his next plan to get inside the octopus and bring hot coffee. The octopus was weakened, but Doc stopped him when Seth was about to attack. They finally made peace with the octopus. Seth's practice with Yaga didn't stop. It just became more intense. Until finally, Seth broke the gloves he had. This disappointed Yaga, so he gave a special glove to him, which made him unable to use his Fantasia powers. Yaga did this because he thought that Seth had only focused on gathering Fantasia powers instead of trying to use them well. On the other hand, Master Lord Majesty called out to Seth and his friends. The huge amount of debt made them punished by cleaning the outer walls of Artemis Academy. While carrying out the punishment, Seth again meets the Bravery Quartet and its leader Don Bossman. The fight continued, but Seth was easily subdued due to Don Bossman's much more tough abilities. Don Bossman offers to help take off Seth's gloves, but with the condition that he forgets about the crimes the Bravery Quartet committed earlier. Seth refuses and manages to attack Don Bossman until he falls. However, he tried to save him and managed to remove the gloves from Yaga. Yaga notices Seth's actions and gives him another new gloves. The gloves, this time, allowed Seth to collect a lot of Fantasias, and his power increased many times over. On the other hand, Dragunov watches over Artemis when his ship gets caught in a storm. It was then that he saw the shadow of Nemesis, who could fly between heavy storms. But the Nemesis did not attack their ship but other ships. Dragunov inspected the ship under attack and noticed a large hole in the stern. Not only that, the ship apparently had a lot of magician captives. The captain of the ship asked Dragunov to repair the ship's damage. But after that, the Nemesis returned and headed to the nearest town. The ship captain didn't care about Nemesis's attack on the other city as long as he could still catch the magicians. Dragunov had another opinion and asked his troops to prepare for battle against Nemesis. The battle continued, but Dragunov did not manage to defeat Nemesis but only drove it away. He returned to the ship to capture the captain, who had caught the ordinary human instead of the magicians. Then Dragunov continued the mission. In Artemis, a festival is taking place. Doc asks Seth and Melly to participate in a broomstick race to earn money to pay off debts. But first, they needed money to register for the race. That's when a noble son named Nick came to Seth's group. Nick is the defending champion in the broomstick race at Artemis Academy. He mocks Seth's group and insults Alma. Seth is angry at Nick's insults to his mother and teacher and defies to beat him. If Seth won the race, Nick wouldn't insult Alma again. In the match, Seth uses the broomstick that Alma gave him. Meanwhile, Nick uses an expensive, more sophisticated broom. The game started, and Seth managed to get ahead of Nick. Unexpectedly, Master Lord Majesty came and attacked them. Seth then counterattacked. On the other hand, Nick speeds up until his friends fall, but Seth saves them. In the end, Nick wins the match, which makes Doc angry with Seth and Melly. On the other hand, another man named Grim apparently intends to attack a city. The scene returns to Artemis Academy, where Doc tries to find a job to quickly pay off debts. That's when he finds a job opening to catch no-name Nemesis. Although Doc tries to hide the ad, Seth and Melly find it and force him to accept the job. While they were going to Nemesis, Dragunov found them and intended to contact General Inquisitor Torque, the Beast. Seth's group arrives at Rumble Town, where no-name Nemesis is located. Rumble Town was deserted and had no inhabitants, but they immediately found Nemesis. Seth and Melly tried to catch up and defeat the two Nemesis. The fight isn't over yet, and Seth sees more Nemesis going somewhere. It was then that Grim appeared in front of him. A fight between Grim and Seth ensues, even though Grim is much stronger. Grim saw the mess they made in the fight in Rumble Town. Finally, he chose to back off and advise Seth that they would meet again later. The existence of Seth's group is known to the Inquisitors, and they intend to capture them. The moral that can be learned from this anime series, which will continue into Season 2, is recognizing one's own strength. In addition, the excitement of fighting as a magician.